Welcome back to Close to Broke, everyone. Today, we're back to the Lucky Lady, but not for what usually happens. Today is that 2-5 game that I've been telling you guys about. So, let's get into some fun. Stakes are going to be a little lower than we're usually playing, but that usually means for significantly more relatable content, and it's just fun. Let's hop into this. Let's have a blast. 2-5, Lucky Lady. If you guys ever want to play with me, this is where you come. Every Sunday at 1 p.m.
Look, I realize that today's episode is not going to be the highest, most ridiculous stakes you've ever watched me play, but this episode is a ton of fun, and it by far one of the most fun times I've ever had playing poker, and I'm sure you can hear it as it reflects through the commentary, as well as my entire energy around the table. That, coupled with the fact that obviously if you guys are interested in playing with me, every single Sunday at 1 p.m., you guys can come through the Lucky Lady. You can sign up on Poker Atlas. You can call to sign in. It's super simple. Sunday, 1 p.m. every single week, every day, every single Sunday of the year. It's going to be sick. And if you can't make it out, you guys can always play with me on the Splash Squads. I was literally double tabling today at the game on the Splash Squads, making a poker vlog. Either way, we've got a poker vlog to get into. And Under the Gun decides to open it up to 20. We're playing 2-5-10 for a lot of the session, 2-5 in some hands. This hand is going to be the latter. Next to act makes a call. The button calls as well, and I'm in the small blind, and we look down at the ladies. Shout out to Bill Burr. We're going to go ahead and crank up the price of poker. I make it 125 to go, and unbeknownst to myself, we're in an action-packed game. Every single person calls. We're going 4 ways off to a massively bloated pot with $500 in the middle. That comes out King 8-7. So there's 2 clubs out there. I don't hold a club. Not a great spot for me. I'm going to go ahead and check and kind of see what I decide I need to do. I'm in the worst position in poker, which is never helpful. Action checks all the way to the in-position player who decides to throw out a bet of 240. With the action on me here as I'm next to act, honestly, I think I just need to pitch it in the muck. I realize that I have a really big hand and this might be a little tight, but the problem now becomes is that I have players to act behind me. I'm the first person to act or react to this bet, and I think when that happens, even though our hand is super strong, it's just really unlikely for me to be better than both players behind me and the player that bets. So works best as a fold, but in real time I decide to make the call. Everyone else folds, and we're going off to a turn card that comes out of 10 of diamonds. Doesn't add any equity to me in any form. Doesn't bring in the front door flush. I check it over to my opponent, and he thinks about it for a bit and checks it back. We're going off to a river card that comes a pretty juicy card as it comes out to 6 of hearts. Juicy, not that it changed anything for me, but it changes a lot to the board texture. I think about it for a quick second if I can ever bluff this river, but I think with a hand as strong as I have, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's still a small chance that I'm ahead against my opponent that is just, going crazy with the flush draw and decided to not go along with it. So I check it over to my opponent, and he pretty quickly checks it back. He ends up showing King Jack of Spades. Good hand to you, Paul. Shout out to Paul. He actually came all the way from the East Coast and ended up swinging through this game. So massive shout out to him. Unfortunate for us, we weren't able to get that pot there. The session is starting to open up like a beautiful bottle of red wine sitting, airing out, getting its legs. What I mean by that is, honestly, we're just getting our gambling degenerate on. There's a $10 straddle here, as we mentioned earlier. And in this spot, 2 limps go on from the early position. Action is on me in the cutoff. I isolate to 60, making it bigger because people just aren't folding. The button cold calls and the small blind cold calls. The limpers fold. We're going 3 ways off to a flop with pocket nines that come King 7 deuce. There are 2 hearts out there. I don't have one. The action checked over to me. Although I don't have a heart in my hand, I do have a heart in my body, obviously. And I'm going to throw out a bet here. I think aggression is okay. In a spot like this multi-way, I don't love it, especially being out of position to one of the players. But hey, I'm here. I have aggression. Seems to win pots. I go ahead and bet 50. Down betting here. Both players make the call. A little worrisome, and even more so when the turn is a heart. Albeit pairing the bottom card here, not the scariest heart in the world, but it's still one. Even more so when our opponent seems to rip our heart out of our chest and just open lead here for 125. Mr. KGB seems to be in some crazy action here and going rather rogue. With the action on me with no heart here and a middle pair seems like a pretty easy fold. I go ahead and make that fold. The player left to act behind me ends up folding as well. And our opponent says, I have a flush in the much more Russian accent, like this one. This is not a very good Russian accent, is it? Either way, he shows 10-7 off with the 10 of hearts, so a really interesting spot there. I don't know if he was bluffing, I don't know if he was value betting, but yeah, he didn't have a flush, but he acted like he had a flush and it worked, and that's all that matters. The session to this point hasn't been great to me, let me tell you. 0 for 2 is not great, but we can only go up from here. Or at least that's what I'm going to tell myself. In this next hand, there are 2 early position limps, and spoiler alert, there will be quite a bit of limping and quite a bit of isolating. Speaking of isolations, the button decides to isolate here to $40. With the action on me here in the big blind, I'm in for 50. We look down at King 10 of Hearts, a suited Broadway. I'm 2 out of the 5 cards here to make a straight flush, specifically a royal flush, so I'm a sucker for it. I make the call. The second limper, KGB, makes the call. We're going off to a flop that comes out Queen, Jack, 8 with 2 spades and a club. With the action checked over to the second limper, KGB decides to start a bet of 100. The action is now on the initial raiser, who thinks about it for a second and then decides to just call. Considering there's a flusher out there, I don't have 8 clean outs, I only have 6. Considering I only have king high and my opponents aren't really that deep, outside from my opponent that showed a little bit of indecision here from the initial raising spot here on the button and just calling that KGB $100 lead, I think that honestly I should just take the aggression in this hand and just go all in, which is what I go ahead and do. KGB has about 300 or 400 left in his stack. He thinks about it for a bit before mumbling under his breath that he's making a fold, which he does in fact do. And the action ends up back here on the initial raiser, who I'm pretty confident is going to make the fold until he doesn't. He ends up making the call here, and he has significantly more money than Mr. KGB has, as he has $600 in front of him. We decide to run it out one time here. The turn card comes the 3 of diamonds, and the river card comes the 9 of diamonds, giving me the absolute nuts. What a miracle river. Like I told you, put the energy out there. We're going to be running great this year. We show our hand. Our nuts are obviously great. Unfortunately for our opponent, he actually played his hand fairly well. He shows ace queen here and absolutely had me trapped and dominated. Unfortunate for him, I end up getting there. Believe it or not, the adrenaline is definitely pumping here. Playing this game, albeit smaller, is freaking sick. All-ins going left and right. These bomb pots are getting ridiculous. And in this next hand, I'm in the $10 straddle. Middle position, KGB decides to raise it up to 20 bucks. The min click, you already know we're going to be in the mix. The button calls before it gets to me, and so does the small blind. And with the action on me, I decide to call here from the straddle with Jack 8 of spades. And we're going off to a flop that looks beautiful to me. Jack, Jack 7, rainbow. With the action checked over to the middle position player, KGB makes it $100 to go. Once again, seems like that's his favorite number. The small blind decides to call here, and with the action back over to me, with KGB having about 300 left in his stack, and that cold caller, I'm assuming, once again, not having anything too strong, I think that I'm playing pretty much just for KGB stack, so I decided to just go all in here. Once again, KGB makes a pretty snappy fold, and once again, I think our opponent from the small blind has a very easy fold as he just flats, but once again, he calls all in. A little worrisome, but hey, I have trip jacks. I can't be in that bad of shape, right? We decide after some negotiations to run out 2 turns and rivers. The first board comes out with the 6 of spades and then the 10 of spades on the river. And the second board comes out with the ace of clubs and the queen of hearts on the river. Our opponent shows Jack 10 for a really unfortunate spot where we're going to get 3/4. Oh, man. Well, I don't know if my jam here is ever getting called by worse, I suppose, as that has been proven, as our opponent wasn't even loving calling with Jack 10 off. Either way, we're going to have to lick our wounds. At the end of the day, I guess we should be happy we didn't get scooped. We ended up getting saved there, at least a couple buckaroonies. Now it's time to battle once again.
Update here from live from the table. We were down a lot, but shout out to the gentleman at the table. We've been had a good time. I think we're a little bit over or even. When you have this much money in front of you and you're even, that's not a great sign. That's our mid-session update. Not a whole lot more to talk about. Oh, that's a poker taco box. Poker tacos over there.
Once again, it seems like there's a party, and the party is consisting of quite a bit of limping. There are 4 limps when the action gets to me, and I look down at ace, king, offsuit, big slick. I isolate to 50 bones. 3 limpers make the call. We're going 4 ways off to a flop that comes Jack 3-5 with 2 hearts. I do have the ace of hearts here, so if there's any hearts that come out, we can definitely represent them. But I'm not a big fan of c-betting flops, but in a spot like this where I have the ace of hearts, I feel significantly more comfortable. I go ahead and make a bet here for $75. The first limper, the gentleman by the name of Bona, really wonderful guy, decides to make the call. He's a viewer of the vlog as well. Everyone else folds, and we're going heads up to a turn card that is literally the best turn card on the deck, as it comes the 10 of hearts. Outside of giving me the best hand with an ace or a king, this is literally the next best thing. We improve to, once again, still 2 overs. We have a gutter ball to the nut straight, and yes, we do, in fact, have a flush draw now. With the action on me, it feels like ramping up the aggression is a good idea, although sometimes checking is alright. I think I'd prefer to do that in position. Out of position, I don't want to give up the betting lead here, so I go ahead and bet, showing the aggression. It seems like I'm really getting involved in this hand. I can easily have the nuts because I blocked it. I have the ace of hearts. I bet 160. Our opponent thinks about it for a bit, seems like he's mulling over a pretty honest decision before deciding to make a fold. I can only assume my opponent folded a hand like 9s or 8s or maybe even a middling pair, but nonetheless, happy to take another pot down, heading in the right direction. As I promised in a couple of episodes ago, I'll do my best to not show too many double board PLO bomb pots, but if I'm showing it, it's probably worth showing, so I don't mean to spoil anything, but this is going to be a big pot. In this next hand here, there's a $20 bomb pot per player, which means there's 160 going into this pot. As you guys know, every single player gets 4 cards here, and you're going straight to a flop of PLO. With 160 in the middle, 2 flops come out. On the top board, it comes out Queen, Jack, Jack, Rainbow. The bottom board comes out 8, 7, Deuce with 2 spades. The action gets checked over to the middle position player, who's again one of my brothers here, one of my best friends in the world, Logan. He decides to throw a little bet here for 120. With the action on me next to act, I finally look down at my hand, and man, we have a pretty decent little hand. Seems like you're going to have to take this hand out of my dead body. I go ahead and make at least a call here. Raising might be a slight overplay. If we can improve on the turn on either board, we can definitely ramp up the aggression. But considering we don't have a nut draw on either board, it seems like it's best to just control the size of the pot for now. An opponent here from the button decides to make the call as well. And we're going off to a turn card that on the top board improves us to a boat with a 6 of diamonds. And on the bottom board doesn't change a whole lot, bringing in the king of hearts. Once again, the action is on Logan, who decides to check it this time. Me being sandwiched in the middle is not great, but considering both of my opponents, you know, it's going to be hard to be beat in both spots. Obviously, if somebody has Queen Jack, it's a tough situation, but I now have boat. I'd rather put my opponents here in a tough spot that maybe have the other board where I'm only drawing to a Jack high flush in a tough spot as well. So I go ahead and I make it pot. I bet 520. The action is now on our opponent here on the button, who goes deep into the tank, thinking about it, mulling over his options, and obviously he's definitely pained. I would later find out that this opponent has not played double board pom pots all that often, so a little bit of a tricky situation where I obviously hope I'm not being nit rolled, but obviously our opponent obviously has a really genuine decision to go over. Eventually, he decides to go all in for what is less than my pot size bet of around 500, and Logan now goes deep into the tank. Logan is thinking about it, and once again, another opponent thinking about it is not great. I would like to get at least one fold here, as me and Logan still have over $1,000 behind to play. That might be a little too big. Luckily for us, he ends up deciding to make the fold. We're going out to the river here, heads up, and over a $1,500 pot. The river on the top board comes out a 10 of clubs, not changing a whole lot, and the bottom board comes a 5 of clubs, improving me to a straight. Well, it's going to be hard to get scooped here now. I go ahead and expose my hand, only losing to Queen Jack 6-9 really. And my opponent cannot beat either hand. I scoop a massive pot. Oh my goodness, that is exactly what we needed to get us close to black. We were into this game for 1,700 and we're sitting with about 1,500 in front of us. This is what dreams are made of. Let's go. There is nothing like a good old-fashioned bomb pot to get the adrenaline going, to get the blood pumping. In this next hand, although it's not PLO double board bomb pot, it's good old-fashioned no limit holdem, which I like just as much. Under the gun limps, next to amp limps as well, the small blind calls, and once again the action is here in the big blind with myself, and we look down at a premium. Ace queen off. I'm gonna go ahead and isolate this to 40 bucks. The limper decides to make the call, and the second limper back raises all in for 275. With the action folded over to me in the big blind, I think about it for a second and realize, hey, am I some kind of nit? We got a call. We have ace queen. It's blackjack. I mean, how bad can it possibly be? I go ahead and make the call here. Actively, I wish I didn't have done that. It allows my opponent here, that's the first limper, to maybe get carried away with a hand like 10-9 suited or Jack-10 suited. I'd prefer to re-isolate. I don't need to go all in, as me and Bona have so much money behind. It probably works best to make a slight raise here to like 550 and not have him creep into the pot. But hey, that's what I ended up doing in real time. Luckily for us, it doesn't come down to it as the first limper folds. And once again, me and this gentleman are heads up. We decide to run the board out twice here, looking to hit an ace or a queen. Our opponent does not expose his hand. The first run out comes 8, 5, 6, rainbow. The turn card comes the deuce of spades, and the river card comes the jack of diamonds. We don't improve here. The second run out comes out an 8, 3 deuce. At this point, our opponent says he's hoping he holds, which pretty much affirms the fact that he does have a pair. Luckily for us, it does not matter, as the turn comes a queen of spades, and the river card comes a king of diamonds. We show our hand, and our opponent shows pocket fours, so a good old-fashioned race. Whew, that was a stressful one. Luckily for us, we ran it twice, and we got there on the second board. In this next hand, there is so many random things that can change the complete trajectory of the hand, but man, I have to step away from the table for a quick second, and I think I'm in the big blind, so I throw out $5. Another opponent for middle position throws out $5 as well. Action's on the button, who makes it 15. The big blind calls a 15, and at this point, you just heard me say the big blind. Wait, I thought I was a big blind. No. Logan's the big blind. I'm actually under the gun, and I actually only called. I haven't even seen my hand at this point. Luckily for us, I do have an option. And after we look down at our hand, we peel it back like an OMC, if I've ever seen one. And we look down at Pig Slick once again. Ace King, what the heck? Well, with all this action, I decided to go ahead and raise up to $125. Our opponent from the middle position limper situation back raises once again all in for $300. Action folds back to me, and at that point, if I can never fold here, I go ahead and make the call. We decide to run out the board one time with over $600 in the middle. The board comes out Jack, 5, deuce. Looks like we're going to need to hit something. The turn card is another Jack. Looks like we're dead to an ace or a king. And the river once again comes the king of hearts. We get fast rolled by our opponent, who shows ace king as well. Oh, man. Thought we had him dead to rights, but looks like it's going to be a chop pot. I joke around with my opponent and eventually show the ace king as well. Everyone loves a chop pot, don't they? Oh, man. Another big spot. Could have obviously scooped there, but man, oh man, would things have been different? The opponent that isolated on the button, what if I just raise? And oh my goodness. Oh, butterfly effect. Well, this, my friends, brings us to the last hand of the session, and man, we saved the best for last. Another fun spot. The straddle is on to $10. Early position limps. I'm in middle position, and I look down at ace jack of diamonds, one of my favorite hands in poker. I'm going to go ahead and isolate this to $50. Once again, I changed my initial limping or limp isolation from 40 to 50 because people just haven't been folding, and it's time to really crank up the aggression and really penalize them for the old limp call. The button makes a call here, and then the small blind jams it all in for $400. With the action folded back to me. Once again, we are entanglement with the same opponent that's been jamming. I'm not folding ace jack. Once again, it's blackjack. It can't be that bad, and it's suited. What is that, like 4% equity? I go ahead and make the call here. Our opponent behind me decides to fold. We decide to run out the board one time for absolutely max pain, and the flop is beautiful as it comes queen 8-3 with 2 diamonds. Man, oh man, do we have quite a bit of outs here, and all the waiting comes to an end immediately. As a turn card comes the 6 of diamonds, improving me to the nuts. The river card is another diamond to add even more pain in this situation, rubbing salt in the wound. Why don't you? We show our hand immediately, obviously, and announce a flush. Our opponent is obviously not excited about me winning that big pot there. He shows ace queen. We definitely get lucky. Either way, running hot in a good spot, especially to end out the session, is great. Things started off rocky early, and man, oh man, did they change quickly. Luckily for us, this session ended up being a really solid one. Not the biggest win in the world, as we mentioned earlier, as we're not playing some big stakes, but man, that was so much fun. The action, the fun, the camaraderie. This is some of the most fun poker I've played ever in my life. It made me, just honestly, I left the table and I was like, man, I still want to play, but duty calls, work is calling, and on the way to work, I've got to talk to you more about today's session.
That was some some of the most fun I've had in a while. Private games, all that stuff is really fun. Man, that was freaking awesome. Playing with a bunch of, obviously, subscribers and friends of the vlog. We ended up having over 20 people show up. Pretty fun for honestly something that we did on last notice. So when you're watching this video, it's Thursday. Today is the first of the clocks went forward. So yeah, I don't really think that matters to you guys all that much unless you're here today and it's been a week and you haven't changed your clock for some reason. Either way, if you guys liked what you saw, make sure to click a like. And also, if you're from the Southern California area or you're just coming through, as we had several people that actually came out that were passing through LA, stop by. Sunday is 1 p.m. They have a cool tournament that they run here as well. So if you want to try that out first and it doesn't work out, you can always hop over and play with the boys and the girls. But outside of that, you guys know what the deal is. If you guys want to play with me and can't make the meetup games or the games that I'm hosting, you guys can always play with me on the Splash Squads. Link to that is at the top of the description. Outside of that, man, I hope you guys have a lovely day. Fun day. We were stuck over 1K at one point in a game like this. Felt scary, but ended up running pretty good there. Scooping the bomb pot, winning another big pot, getting lucky with ace jack against ace queen. Pretty solid day all in all. It's gonna cut it close. This is what happens when the time goes forward, right? It's still bright out. But I've got to go to work. We've got to handle some stuff there as duty calls. Outside of that, we were into the game for 1,700 and out for 2,100 exact. Happy to take the win. Not gonna be winning this game all that often. But today we didn't even have any mediocre hands to even splash down. We had some really bad hands or some really good hands. So, all that to be said, I hope you guys have a lovely day. This was a long outro, but man, this was so much fun. Thank you to every single person that came out, and thank you to everyone that even came out that wasn't even from LA. They were just passing by and they decided to stop by to support. So, outside of that, I hope you guys have a lovely day. Stay happy, stealthy, more importantly, y'all, run good at the tables. Deuces.